Welcome to the ShockCast. I'm John Little, recording on a cool Tainan evening on Sunday, March 24th, 2019, although technically it's Monday. Please remember that this week's YouTube playlist is available on the playlist section of the Shock YouTube channel or in the description below. Read my book, Ezekiel's Fire. It's free on ezekielsfire.com, but it won't always be. In this week's ShockCast, we'll first talk about the first part of my series on how pornography has destroyed us and is killing you. Avi Yemeni exposes Jim Jeffries as a lying liar, and it's an example of how corrupt journalism and journalists, how they really are. We are facing civil chaos and even revolution in America and Europe, and history shows us why. The World Happiness Report came out, and we look at what happiness is all about. We look at the incredible amount of censorship in the discussion of vaccines. Then we look at the horrendous amount of corruption in America. It has been a month since I talked about Isaiah 19 and the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, and we have more developments. The war against the freedom to share information and commentary has gotten hotter, and it's not good. We have even more evidence of recession. We still keep adding crazy to the insanity report, and Khalifa Haftar is knocking on the gates of Tripoli. And I got really mad about one of the dumbest decisions that America ever made in the Middle East and why it paved the way for Gog and Magog. Now, let's begin today's program. Pornography destroyed us and is killing you. Pornography warps and twists the minds of everyone that it touches. It degrades relationships, it damages marriages, it ruins our ethics and morals, it unravels the bonds that bind our society together. And the internet has made the foulest kinds of pornography available to the whole world for free. Worst, we have become so desensitized to the evil of pornography that it is no longer considered evil, filthy, or even shameful. Yes, shame. We've lost a sense of that. We don't even know what it is anymore. In short, pornography destroyed us, and it's killing you. I had a ringside seat for the growth of the internet. I had one of the first PCs ever produced. My first job out of college was helping companies set up networks so that they could operate more quickly and efficiently. When I was in finance, I made my biggest call to buy Apple stock in 1996 when the news came out that Steve Jobs was coming back to Apple. The partners in the investment firm didn't listen, and they aren't in business anymore. And when the internet came into being, we all wanted to be on it. We all wanted to reach out and touch the other side of the world. To this day, I still remember that fantastic moment when I connected to a computer in Japan for the first time. It might sound like old hat to you, but you weren't in the midst of the fantastic growth of the computer industry, where we just had rudimentary hardware and dreams of what might be. Even science fiction books written in those early days were not able to foresee what we have today, nor did we understand in those early days what the driving force of the internet would be. There were a lot of attempts at making money on the internet, but the first and primary purpose was the free exchange of information and ideas. And when connection speeds increased, we were able to exchange pictures and then videos. Did you know the industry that was the first to make money on the internet? That's right, pornography. And it's also the #1 reason why your internet connection is so fast. There was an insatiable demand for pornography, and it was hard for the internet to keep up. In fact, one of the reasons why some internet services would block pornography was because it would take up so much bandwidth. If they didn't, nothing else would get through. But the internet has gotten so fast that we don't worry so much about these things anymore. In fact, the internet is so fast and cheap that you can get the hardest of hardcore pornography for free. And I am truly amazed at how awful it has become. When I was a kid, pornography came via a magazine carefully concealed in brown paper. When videotape came along, you had to go to the bad part of town to get your X-rated videotapes. Even X-rated DVDs weren't so easy to get. Then porn hit the internet. And all that you needed to do was claim that you were 18 or older and you could watch as much of it as you wanted. And it is one of, if not the, leading cause of sexual corruption in America. When I left the United States as a painfully single young man in 1992, the question on every young man's mind was, do you kiss on the first date? When God dragged me back from Israel 14 years later, that wasn't the question anymore. And by leaps and bounds, pornography has leapt across the globe. It went from being a Western phenomenon to being truly worldwide. It was everywhere, so much so that the #1 reason why I have an ad blocker is to stop from being assaulted by pornographic advertisements. Why? The majority of those who research finance and geopolitics are male. And porn producers know that every guy is vulnerable to porn. So to stop having female anatomy from being waved in my face, I had to set up the best ad blocker that I could find. And right now that's uBlock Origin. And I get nothing from them for saying that. And for a while, lots of social media sites were permissive about porn. But when pedophiles started uploading child porn, social media had to stop being permissive. Tumblr did that, and their traffic fell by 30%. Think about that. A social media site had 30% of their users coming for just porn, for just pornography. And then they stopped coming when they turned off the pornography. What a horrible reflection upon our society. And when I saw that, I got upset and went looking for more statistics on pornography. Right off the top, you don't even need to look up any statistics to know that almost all of those who stopped going to Tumblr were men. Well, mostly men, since Pornhub reports that 29% of their viewership is now female. Worse, Pornhub is proud of the fact that this 29% figure is a big 3% increase over the past year worldwide. When I went to find statistics on pornography, I realized that no one does better stats than Pornhub. They are proud of the amount of pornography that they churn out. In fact, they are so proud of themselves that they boast of having 115 years worth of pornography video. You can spend 115 years watching pornography on their site and not repeat one video. And they are getting 92 million visits a day, and the data bandwidth that they are consuming every day is more than the entire bandwidth of the internet in 2002. And every minute, about 64,000 new visitors are being newly corrupted every day. And since they are business-minded, Pornhub also added a social network element where shameless users can communicate with each other. Oh, and if you want to know a big reason why that moron porn star, Stormy Daniels, went public, she's the #1 search on Pornhub. That stupid woman is making money by all the publicity that she's getting. Oh, and who has the most horrendously huge traffic on Pornhub? Can you guess? The nation? The country? Can you? Yeah, you guessed it. It's America. Americans watch as much porn as the next 3 largest consumers of porn on Pornhub combined, the UK, India, and Japan, with room left over for some of Canada, who is in 5th place. And India has really jumped on the porn bandwagon in the 18 to 24 age demographic. India is double. And then in percentage terms, almost anyone else. And sorry, the 25 to 34 demographic is also huge in India. Losing my mind. 18 to 34. Man, those guys are really consuming porn in India. This means that India is being corrupted by pornography at a highly accelerated rate, and it's all because of America. And the Philippines? They are accelerating up the rankings in porn viewership, up 3 places just from last year. This breaks my heart, since the Filipino people are some of the nicest on the planet, yet they are being destroyed. Oh, and now that Syria is coming out of her civil war, she has rocketed into Pornhub's statistics. But still, only 20 countries represent 80% of daily traffic on Pornhub. Again, with America at the top. Now, I started out talking about the advent of computers and how computers were connecting to the internet. What I didn't get into was the smartphone. And most people are watching all this pornography on their smartphones. The bottom line, the internet is the worst thing that has ever happened to us and to the world. And this is horrifying. But this is just Pornhub. I haven't even touched the other statistics that I've found. And no, I will not give a link to the statistics page of Pornhub. Thankfully, I didn't need to touch any other part of that site than their stats page. Not even their home page, thankfully. But just combing through their statistics was revolting. They're so proud of what they've accomplished. They are positively crowing about how much pornography they have inflicted upon us, as well as where it's coming from and who is viewing it. They love talking about the kind of pornography that appeals to which kind of person. They are wallowing in their utter depravity. How wretched and evil must you be to joyfully proclaim all this? If you want to know one of the big reasons why God must destroy America, this is one of them. All of that porn is based in America. More than 90% of worldwide pornography comes from America. I'm afraid that there is a lot more to talk about on this subject, but I must stop here. But before I do, let me show you a heartbreaking video that I stumbled across. In fact, not sure that I'll be able to include it here, but that video is a YouTube titled Over 18, a documentary about pornography. In that video, a child is shown to have been horribly damaged. And we did this. We Americans. We allowed it. We gave it money. We fed the flames. And this evil reaches into every home around the world. Only those too poor to have an internet connection are free. Now we get to the news and analysis from this past week. However, before going on, take a moment to click the subscribe button below and hit that bell to be notified when the next ShockCast happens. Those of you listening via MP3, make sure that you are subscribed to the Shock Letter at theshockletter.com. The ShockCast is just a fraction of what is in the Shock Letter that goes out every Friday for absolutely free. And unsubscribing is easy. I will never share your email, ever. Again, read my book, Ezekiel's Fire. For now, it's free. And it's free because I want to help save your life. And you can find it at ezekielsfire.com. Please read that book. I want you to survive what is coming. Now, let's get on with this week's news and analysis. There is a special place in my heart for journalists who are lying liars. I've had to deal with their lying lies for far too long. You have had too. Also, the problem is that the cleverest lying liars are so good at manipulating the truth that you won't know that you are being lied to. And we have a perfect example of this in a YouTube video recorded by Avi Yemeni in Australia in response to the horrible deception by Jim Jeffries. The video is titled Savage. Avi Yemeni exposes hashtag Jim Jeffries with hidden camera. A number of you are Australians, and you know about Jim Jeffries. What you might not know is how utterly evil he is. He is a cunning liar and deceiver, and he did his very best to destroy Avi Yemeni. But Avi was wise to his lies and turned the tables on him. And Avi was able to show what Jim Jeffries is really like when he doesn't know that he's being filmed. Jim mocks Muhammad. He mocks Islam in some of the most grotesque ways that I would never ever dream of doing. But the worst of it is that he takes clips of his guest, answering one question, and then he splices that answer into another part of the interview to make it look like his victim is answering a different question in the most horrible and awful way possible. If you watched his interview of Avi Yemeni on the Jim Jeffries show, you would think that Avi was a grotesque and evil man, all because of the clever editing that Jim Jeffries did. It was a complete hit job. It was pure character assassination. Then, as I was getting ready to record this ShockCast, I discovered that Breitbart ran a story of Avi Yemeni's expose of Jim Jeffries. Here's that core part of what Breitbart said. Quote, Jeffries interviewed Yemeni some months ago, but only published the video recently following the shooting at the Christchurch Mosque in New Zealand. In fact, the Jeffries show appears to imply that the interview took place after the shooting. Jeffries discusses many issues with Yemeni, but mainly focuses on the topics of Islam and Australian migration laws. A clip from the edited interview shows Jeffries asking Yemeni, what gives anyone the right to tell anyone where they can and can't live? The interview then cuts to Yemeni stating, when you import this culture, what do you think is going to happen? Australia is going to end up the same S-word hole that they were escaping. Of course, this interaction appears to portray Yemeni as a staunch opponent of personal freedoms, except the clip shown by Jeffries is not what actually happened. In the case of the first question that Yemeni is asked by Jeffries, what gives anyone the right to tell anyone where they can and can't live, Yemeni actually replied, borders and government, and then Jeffries cuts him off saying, I know borders, but wouldn't it be nice if we got to a place in society where we had our own utopia where we all just lived as one? You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Yemeni replied, I think most sensible people would agree with you in theory, but in practice, it goes against human nature. It just doesn't work. Later in the segment, discussing Islam, Yemeni discusses the issue of drawing a depiction of the Muslim prophet Muhammad, which is prohibited by the religion. Jeffries jokes about this and draws a quick sketch of Muhammad on a clipboard, describing him as a wobbly ghost, despite Yemeni's warnings that doing so will offend many Muslims and that he has already received death threats over similar actions. Of course, this segment of Jeffries drawing Muhammad was not included in the final show. Close quote. Think about how utterly deceptive all of that is. That is Jim Jeffries. But from my own personal experience in the Middle East with journalists, other modern-day journalists are just as deceptive. You just do not know how foul and evil journalism has become when it is directed at destroying those who are good. It is truly beyond most people's wildest imaginations, which is why they get away with it. Again, this is what journalists do these days. They lie and lie and lie and lie and lie some more. One newspaper reporter even did it to me back in the U.S. 30 years ago, subtly, deliberately twisting what I had said to mock a statement that I had made about science fair projects. Now, not all journalists are scum, but the ones at the top are. They're the most foul and evil minions of Satan because they are playing with your minds. They're playing with your beliefs. They are warping your perception of reality to coincide with their own. They are diabolical fiends from hell, and they've sold their soul for a byline and 15 minutes of fame. And Jim Jeffries, wherever you are condemned by God to everlasting torment in hell if you do not repent, accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and seek to undo all, and yes, that means all, of the evil you have done. Jim Jeffries, you are destined for hell. You and all the foul minions of Satan that you work with. And I'm amazed at such blatant and appalling evil. How utterly diabolical. And well done, Avi Yemeni. Kol hakavod, achi. Hey, let's talk civil chaos and even the possibility of revolution. In his article titled A Precarious Revolution is Brewing, Charles Hugh Smith makes a fascinating comparison between the American Revolution and conditions in America today. And unfortunately, this is not a good thing to see. Here is the first paragraph. Quote, "The American Revolution arose not from politics, but from rapid social economic changes that revealed the precariousness of the colonist prosperity. Conventional histories focus on the context, or the Boston Tea Party, etc. But more important were the changes in social relations and the impact of the economy, moving from quasi-feudal forms of patronage to an economy of impersonal market forces. The political revolution was the result of profound shifts in social and economic structures." Close quote. The British government was acting without regard for the welfare of its American colonies, and the colonists were realizing that London represented a real threat to their livelihood. The colonists were becoming prosperous, and the British government wished to rapaciously take that prosperity from them. At the same time, new ideas were reaching the average colonist. Individualism, reason, liberty, they were all capturing the thought and mind of the average person. So as a new economy was forming, new ideas were flooding in, and the British government was failing to understand the new paradigm. And when the old ways of control stopped working, the British government just piled on more and more of the old ways of control. The whip used to work well at one time, until those being whipped realized that they could take away the whip from the hand of their abusers. The British quickly found themselves outnumbered and did not understand why until it was too late. And I'm still a bit peeved over the fact that the British brought that Hessian in who killed the first John Little in America. Then Charles Hugh Smith writes three paragraphs. Quote, "As I noted last week in What If Politics Can't Fix What's Broken, politics as practiced in a bygone era of stability no longer offers any solutions to these profound disruptions. Middle ground has vanished, and ideologies have become quasi-religious because they no longer offer any practical guidance to a society and economy that are being transformed by the Fourth Industrial Revolution, resource depletion, and demographics. Once again, Americans are awakening to the precariousness of their prosperity, and liberties and traditional forms of belonging, loyalty, and authority are unraveling. As the pie shrinks, the struggle to maintain one's own share at the expense of others becomes Darwinian. And so it's no surprise that finance and politics are increasingly winner-take-all or winner-take-most, zero-sum endeavors. The elite college admission scandal is a timely example of this dynamic. Those with $500,000 can bribe the right people in centralized hierarchy to get their little darling onto a winner-take-most career track." Close quote. Society is changing, and there's a growing view that the elites are keeping us from getting what we deserve. Up to this point, we were willing to see the elites take more than their fair share as long as our own prosperity was on the increase. But that has changed. The economic pie is shrinking, and the elites are still rapidly increasing their share of that pie, while the average person has no hope at all of any increase in prosperity. In fact, the hope of even holding on to what prosperity that they have is gone. Millennials have already given up hope of duplicating the prosperity of their parents, the baby boomers, and for Generation Y, well, they see the depressed view of their parents and even bleaker outlook of their own future. And what? What will Generation Y and Z do? Well, let me give you the end of this article. Quote, "A precarious revolution is brewing as the old social, political, and economic structures unravel and fail. The sober politics of compromise is giving way to the expedient politics of bread and circuses, borrowing whatever sums are needed to placate every corrupt parasitic elite and every demanding constituency. This is the pathway to financial ruin, as the currency will be destroyed by the politics of expediency. New social, political, and economic structures will arise that are stable because they reflect new realities. Describing these structures is the purpose of my books. Pathfinding Our Destiny, Preventing the Final Fall of Our Democratic Republic, Money and Work Unchained, A Radically Beneficial World, Automation, Technology, and Creating Jobs for All. The future belongs to work that is meaningful. The politics of failed ideologies and financial expediency will not end well. Close quote. One thing is clear to me: the morons in Washington, D.C. do not understand the destruction that they have wrought in America. And those that do understand are so psychopathic that they just do not care about the suffering of their subjects. They're just like King George and how he felt about the colonists 250 years ago. All of this sounds a lot like what Jesus was speaking about when he told his disciples about the last days. Quote, "For ethnos shall rise against ethnos, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall arise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold." Matthew 24, 7-12. Close quote. I deliberately placed the word ethnos in there instead of nation. Why? Because you understand that ethnos is the root of ethnic. You get that. And that is what Jesus meant when he said nation, or ethnos. And when the translators of the King James Version were translating that word ethnos, they understood that the word nation was the same as saying ethnic group. What Jesus was speaking of was revolution and the fracturing of countries along ethnic lines, and countries that will rise up against each other. But that will only be the beginning. As bad as things have been until now, you haven't seen anything yet. Please understand that devastation is coming. Even though Charles Hugh Smith compares our current situation to the American Revolution, what we will see won't be like that. And Charles understands that because he ends his piece with a picture of the Chinese Revolution. And you do not want the Chinese Revolution. No, seriously. It was bad, real bad. 60 million dead. Bad. Okay, so hopefully you understand what Charles Hugh Smith said, and I hope that you read the article. But I want to add another dimension to all this, and it comes from someone who calls himself Hardscrabble Farmer. And his article was titled, 5 Reasons We're in This Mess. Hardscrabble talks about the fourth turning. And that's a big deal, since it seems that we are right in one of those. If you don't know what the fourth turning is all about, listen up. Quote, in the book, which was written in the late 1990s, authors William Strauss and Neil Howe theorize that the history of civilization moves in 80 to 100 year cycles called secula. The idea behind this theory dates back to the Greeks who believed that a given seculum's end would come ekpyrosis, or a cataclysmic event. This era of change is known as the fourth turning, and it appears we are in the midst of one right now. The last few fourth turnings that America experienced ushered in the Civil War and the Reconstruction era, and then the Great Depression and World War II. Before all that, it was the Revolutionary War. Each fourth turning had similar warning signs: periods of political chaos, division, social and economic decay, in which the American people reverted from extreme division and were forced to reunite in the rebuild of a new future. But that only came after massive conflict. Today's divide among many Americans is strong. We are headed for a collision that will rip this country apart at the seams. The timing of the next fourth turning is now, and it could take at least another decade to complete the cycle. After the fourth turning, America will not be the America you are accustomed to today. So let us stop calling today the greatest economy ever and start preparing for turbulence. Close quote. I got that quote from an article written in October of last year called most Americans see a sharply divided nation. The fourth turning is here. Unfortunately, that quote got it just a teeny tiny bit wrong. We aren't just facing turbulence, we're facing utter catastrophe and the rise of the Antichrist. This will be a horrendous and horrifying time. Do you like being happy? I know that I do, even though I'm not completely certain about what happiness is sometimes, but I certainly catch sight of it, even every once in a while, especially on Sundays. No, really, Sunday is my favorite day of the week, and church is my favorite place to spend it. But let's get back to happiness. I saw that there was a World Happiness Report, and I went looking for it and found it on Wikipedia of all places. Now, there are several different ways of measuring happiness, and I'm not sure that this report is actually the best one, but it might be a good place to start. The issue is, to my mind, fulfillment. Does your life have worth? One of the reasons why Israel is so high on the happiness list is that every person in Israel knows that they are valued very highly. Family, friends, and even the government are directly involved in helping you, if you are an Israeli. Yes, the stress is high, and the trauma of some of what happens in Israel is overwhelming at times. But let me ask you, where you live, does anyone care about you? Is there anyone that you can trust to pull you out if you find yourself in the pit of despair? For Israelis, there's always someone that you can trust, whether it's family or the guys you served with in the IDF or the guys you work with. In America, not so much. What about your church? How many of the people that you go to church with could you trust with your life? If you got into serious trouble and desperately needed help, would they be there for you? Would you be there for them? If someone desperately needed help, would you be there for them? Is there a limit to the help that you would give? You see, this is how far our churches have fallen. We don't love each other anymore. We have limits to how far we're willing to help. Our generosity is tiny. One day soon, everything in your life that you thought was stable will fall, and you will desperately need help. Will there be anyone to help you when that day comes? Will you be ready to help others when their day comes? And is your church the kind of church that would chip in and help when things go bad? When things go bad, your community of friends and family, and especially your church, will be the ones to give you the safety that you need. That will always be the first step in preparation for the difficult days ahead. Then, as I was looking for more stuff on happiness, I ran into this TED Talk by Dr. Robert Wagner from 2 years ago, and it's titled, "What Makes a Good Life? Lessons from the Longest Study on Happiness." Harvard did a huge study on what makes people happy, and they are already 75 years into the study, and the current director of this study presents their findings so far. But let me quote the first couple of his almost 13-minute presentation. Quote, "What keeps us healthy and happy as we go through life? If you were going to invest now in your future best self, where would you put your time and your energy? There was a recent survey of millennials asking them what their most important life goals were, and over 80% said that a major life goal for them was to get rich. And another 50% of those same young adults said that another major life goal was to become famous. And we're constantly told to lean in to work, to push harder and achieve more. We're given the impression that these are the things that we need to go after in order to have a good life. Pictures of entire lives, of the choices that people make and how those choices work out for them. Those pictures are almost impossible to get. Most of what we know about human life we know from asking people to remember the past, and as we know, hindsight is anything but 20/20. We forget the vast amounts of what happens to us in life, and sometimes memory is downright creative. And I've got a mosquito running around. Excuse me. Hopefully I got it. But what if we could watch entire lives as they unfold through time? What if we could study people from the time that they were teenagers all the way into old age to see what really keeps people happy and healthy? We did that. The Harvard study of adult development may be the longest study of adult life that's ever been done. For 75 years, we've tracked the lives of 724 men, year after year, asking about their work, their home lives, their health, and of course asking all along the way without knowing how their life stories were going to turn out. Close quote. And do you know their conclusion? Here, I'll give it to you. It's his last statement in this presentation. Quote, "The good life is built with good relationships." Close quote. How interesting. What was it that Jesus said to us? Quote, "A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another, as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another." Close quote. John 13:34-35. How much love do you have for your fellow brother or sister in Christ? Are you telling me the truth? Are you telling yourself the truth? Do you love your brothers and sisters in Christ in the same way that Christ loved us? Do you understand how huge and gigantic that standard of love is? Remember that God knows how much you love your brothers and sisters in Christ, and you can bet that the people around you know how much you love your brothers and sisters in Christ too. They see how you act towards each other, and they will know that you are a true follower of Christ if they see that love. Again, if you want to survive the evil days that are coming, you need to be a community, or need to be in a community that loves each other like Jesus called us to love. Do not expect to survive if you are not in such a community. And you know what? Not only will you survive, but you will find happiness. Let's talk about censorship regarding vaccines and whether they work as well as they should and if they are dangerous to us. And I saw a video by Aaron and Melissa Dykes of TruthStream Media titled "Free Speech and Shutting Down the Vaccine Debate." And just for the record, let me state something clearly. I am not anti-vaccine. The question is whether every vaccine is necessary or whether the additives in these vaccines are doing damage to you and whether or not we need them. Are there substitutes that we could have instead of what we have now? The problem is that the vaccine industry does not want any question raised over how these vaccines are made and whether there is a better, safer way to make these vaccines. Remember that every vaccine is an assault on the body because each vaccine is designed to encourage the body to create defenses against the virus or bacteria that it is in danger of being harmed by. Each of these assaults does damage. It's what an assault does. Now, the assault might be small enough for the body to recover from, and the reward might outweigh the risk. But we aren't being allowed to talk about this. This is what's bothering me. Again, I am not anti-vaccine, but not being able to have a discussion about what vaccine we should take and when we should take it is maddening. Does a baby who is 1 day old need to be assaulted by multiple vaccines of questionable efficacy? Have we really looked into the potential harm that these vaccines might do to a baby that is 1 day old? Why are we unable to discuss the risk-reward ratio of a vaccine? Why are these morons out there trying to shut down this conversation? Flat earthers are the dumbest morons on the planet, but I don't feel any need to shut them down. I'm just incredibly amazed by this desire to shut down this discussion about vaccines. Just because vaccines work doesn't mean that you should take every vaccine. Oh, and notice something interesting. When did this whole vaccine push, this dramatic increase in taking vaccines, start? In the 1980s. Why the 1980s? Because that was when the United States government gave the vaccine industry blanket immunity from lawsuits. That's right. You don't get to sue vaccine makers for the damage that they caused your child. I understand why Congress did this, and some vaccines are necessary for the common good. But the vaccine industry took this law and turned it into a monster. Worse, they then threw billions of dollars at federal and local governments so that they would require, as a bribe, they kind of grease the wheel to require you to take all of their vaccines. And they've made a lot of money on this scam. Do you remember what God said about the great whore who rides the beast? Quote, "And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived." Close quote. Revelation 18:23. I call her the beast rider, or just beast rider. And that word sorceries is pharmakia. Sound familiar? I'm sorry, but the beast rider looks a lot like America, and her capital is New York. You might think that the beast rider holds the reins of the beast in Washington, but think again. New York is where the rider sits, where all the world's banks and stock markets and bond markets must bow. The only question that I have is this: America or New York City is either the beast rider or a part of the beast. Take your pick, but either way, it's bad. But let's get back to the point. We are losing our freedom to speak, and it's maddening to watch. I should start calling this the corruption report. What is going on with Hillary and the corruption being revealed in Washington is so huge that I doubt that it is possible to emphasize enough the seriousness of this situation. I believe that these revelations will eventually take down the Republic and replace the current government with one ruled by the generals, and please do not discount this. Remember what John Adams said about democracies. They always commit suicide. And that is what America is doing. The first article in our tawdry list of foul evidence is this one that I saw on Zero Hedge. DOJ and Clinton lawyers struck secret deal to block FBI access to the Clinton Foundation emails. Struck. The evidence of Clinton corruption is so vile and so compelling that it amazes me that no one is shocked by this. This is completely treasonous. That foul woman and her filthy husband need to be in jail for the rest of their lives. But nothing will happen to them, and they will get to keep all the corrupt and illegal money that they received. That, my friends, is America. Then we have some news about Democrat Kamala Harris, who is running for president. This article is titled, "As a Prosecutor, Harris Declined to Probe Herbalife." So, old Kamala had a cozy relationship with Herbalife and decided not to investigate them when there were obvious grounds for doing so. Oh, she would make a perfect president. Then there's the Pentagon. Zero Hedge had an article titled, "Bombshell Report, Pentagon Mismanaged $2.1 billion in F-35 stealth jet parts." Mismanaged? No, the word is stolen. It's theft. And that's what they know about, just one part of this corrupt program. Oh, and then there's this one, which was kind of humorous in a way. Senators stunned by Air Force plan for more Boeing F-15X fighters and F-35 cuts. Oops. Someone in the military was smart enough to realize that they were being lied to and stolen blind, so they chose a different strategy, one that's a little more cost-conscious. It's not enough, but it's something. Then we have this one. Sitting ambassadors participated in plot to take Trump down. Meadows from Zero Hedge. Seriously, wow. Of course, the Department of State has always had a cozy relationship with the CIA. After all, they helped create the CIA. Very interesting and vile. Really vile. And to top off our vile segment on corruption, we have something from the UK. UK denies asylum to Christian convert from Iran because Christianity is not peaceful, from Zero Hedge. Even more proof in the corruption of the British government. This is a legitimate asylum request. This man will face death should he be forced to return to Iran. But the dirtbag who attempted to reject his asylum request hates Christianity so much that he went to great lengths to criticize Christianity as a violent religion, which it is most assuredly not. It has been a month since I published anything on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So it's time to look at how this situation is developing. Remember that a new government has taken over and new contractors have been brought in to help increase the pace of construction. And the construction delays over the past year are only going to make the filling of this dam even more extreme. This dam must go online as soon as possible to start repaying all the debts that have accumulated. And the new government in Addis Ababa will want to demonstrate results to stay in power. This means that all those promises that they will carefully fill the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam will be completely and utterly worthless. I believe that they will fill that dam as fast as possible, drying up the Nile just as chapter 19 of Isaiah said that they would. Over the past 5 years, the Ethiopian government has kept saying that they will start filling this dam next year, and never do. This time, they might mean what they say. This is going to be traumatic for Egypt, just as Isaiah said it would be. Well, the crisis group came out with a report called Bridging the Gap in the Nile Waters Dispute. This is the most comprehensive analysis of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam project that I have seen since I started talking about this dam in 2014. Yes, that's right. I've been hollering about this for 5 years. What has Egypt done in that intervening time period to prepare itself for this catastrophe? Nothing. And now that Ethiopia has brought in the Chinese, any hope for a slow filling of this dam is impossible. Worse, this article points out that the design of this dam was done in secrecy, so they weren't able to bring in experts to create a design that would limit the damage to Egypt. Well, this need for secrecy and lack of skilled input has created a dam design that maximizes the damage to Egypt. Good dam designs are deep and narrow. This one is shallow and wide. If nothing else, it means that evaporation will reduce the volume of water flowing into the Nile just by itself. And this article pretty much points the finger of blame at Egypt without specifically saying so. This article is also overly optimistic. I think that it thinks that talks can hammer out a way to keep Egypt and Egyptians from dying. But their optimism would only be warranted if there was some real leverage that could be applied to Ethiopia. But there isn't. Ethiopia funded this dam internally and has turned to China for the rest of the funding. So unless someone can get China to exert pressure on Ethiopia to slow the filling of this dam, there is nothing to stop Ethiopia from moving too quickly to keep Egypt alive. Unfortunately for Egypt, Ethiopia is under pressure to fill this dam very, very quickly to start generating as much power as possible, as quickly as possible, so that they can sell that electricity for as much money as possible to pay off their debts to China and their own people. And there's a new government in Ethiopia, and they want to be able to stay in power for as long as possible, and that means promising not to fill this dam quickly and then breaking that promise immediately and strangling the Nile as they fill it far too fast. The bottom line, we are seeing the fulfillment of Isaiah 19 right in front of our very eyes. And I can hardly believe what I'm seeing. Oh, and finally, there are some videos of pretty good quality that I can share on this issue. Over the past 5 years of reporting on this topic, it has been hard to get good information on what is happening. And we finally have a couple of videos that do a pretty good job of giving summaries of what is happening from each side of this issue. The first one is from an Ethiopian point of view, and it's a YouTube video called The Nile Waters Dispute, the Ethiopian Position. The second video is from the Egyptian point of view, and it's called The Nile Waters Dispute, the Egyptian Position. This video describing the Egyptian side of things might be the most important, as the speaker says the Nile is Egypt. Without the Nile, there can be no Egypt. Unfortunately, because of Egypt's bad faith moves towards Ethiopia and some, I don't know, possible accidents that may or may not have been Ethiopia's fault, Egypt has not handled the situation with Ethiopia in a friendly way. This is why a dam project like this was always going to happen at the worst possible time for Egypt. When they were powerful, Egypt didn't want to share the Nile in any way. and was able to force Ethiopia to keep the Nile untouched. Now that she is weak, Egypt will have the Nile taken away from her. And all of these events are a part of the fulfillment of Isaiah 19. Then there's another article that lays out the current situation surrounding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. However, his insistence that a deal must be done is incorrect. The article comes from allafrica.com website, and it's called Ethiopia, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is the new reality, why a deal must be done. From a humanitarian perspective, the author, Shemelis Desu, is entirely correct. He's correct. Even a fantastic agreement would cause horrible hardship. So from his humanitarian perspective, he is completely right. And I would love to claim that such a deal can be done or must be done, but it cannot. I'm afraid that any deal that Ethiopia agrees to will be promptly broken whenever it suits them to break it. Or maybe I should put it another way. This deal will be broken whenever China pressures Ethiopia to break the deal. Remember that China has been brought in to help complete this dam, and they will want their money. So this dam will need to be filled pretty quickly to make sure that this dam can start selling electricity as soon as possible. The maddening thing, from my perspective, is that Egypt had 8 years to prepare for this dam, and it has done pretty much nothing. And this next article is titled, Egypt Races to Reduce Impact of $5 Billion Ethiopian Dam. Just to give you an idea of the effect that this dam will have on Egypt, here's a quote from this article. Quote, Ethiopia plans to store 74 billion cubic meters of Nile water behind the dam, which would affect the 55.5 billion cubic meters of water that Egypt currently gets from the Nile. Egypt's leaders insist the dam will also benefit all 3 countries, close quote. This dam represents the suffering and death of millions of Egyptians. Think about this. The dam will hold 74 billion cubic meters of Nile water, while Egypt consumes 55.5 cubic meters of water, billion cubic, by the way, both billion cubic meters of water. This dam will hold more than what the Egyptians consume in a year. So how much water will the Egyptians be able to, yeah, right, you can do the math. And I'm afraid that Isaiah 19 predicted this, and I'm puzzled by Ethiopia's insistence that this dam will also benefit Egypt. There's no way that this dam would ever benefit Egypt in any way. Oh, and to give you an idea of what they mean when they say that Egypt is racing to reduce the impact of this dam, here's this article on what that means. Egypt tightens restrictions on media social networks. That's right. Egypt is in trouble, and the government is getting ready to tighten its grip on power because food and water scarcity will cause people to challenge that grip on power. China has been doing the same for roughly the same reasons, for itself. So Egypt is going to do its very best to keep her people in the dark as their destruction races towards them. The Egyptian people won't know what killed them because the Egyptian government will deny them the ability to find out what is happening to them. Then to add another dimension to this crackdown on freedom of speech, the president of Egypt is changing the rules on how long he can stay in power. This bit of news comes from the Jerusalem Post in an opinion piece written by Tzvi Mazel, titled, Changes in the Wind for Egypt, ? So it really does look like Abdel Fattah al-Sisi will be the cruel Lord described in Isaiah 19, quote, And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts. Close quote. Isaiah 19:4. I know that al-Sisi doesn't look cruel, but you need to take a closer look at his methods of what he is doing. He's a lot less cuddly than he looks, and when things turn bad, he will be forced to take the gloves off. In a very real sense, he won't have a lot of choice. Millions of people will die anyway. He will just want to make sure that he isn't one of them. Oh, and I stumbled over this article on armyrecognition.com titled, Ethiopian Army possibly equipped with Russian Pantsir S-1 air defense system, from the March 2019 Global Defense Security Army News Industry. It looks like Ethiopia isn't stupid. They bought that air defense system as a way of making sure that Egypt doesn't get any ideas about bombing this dam, although they do not specifically say this. Think of it as a message to Egypt. There really is a concerted attempt to deny you the freedom to speak and the freedom to hear and read what you wish to hear and read. I am truly horrified by this struggle by the mainstream media and social media to shut down anyone that disagrees with them. This is sick and twisted, and I am sickened by this attack on your ability to obtain the kinds of facts that you need to see the future clearly. And yes, they really do want to control what and how you think. We already heard about the foul attack of Jim Jeffries on Avi Yemeni and the attempt to suppress any disagreement over vaccines. So let's dig a little deeper and talk about my articles being shadow banned on the Google search engine. And I am inspired to talk about this after reading a Breitbart article titled, Jeff Landry, All Options Are on the Table to Break Big Tech Monopolies. Last week I talked about epistemology, the study of how we know what we know and how we know that it is true. Well, we have a huge problem when the companies that govern the pipeline for discovering information are making it impossible for you to find that information. For instance, do a Google search for my article, The Truth About Israel, and make sure that you put that search in double quotation marks so that the search engine will not be confused by what you are looking for. On Google, you will not find my article no matter how deep you go into the search results. My article will not be found, period. You will only find it on Google if you know that I wrote it and put it on the word put in the word Omega Shock after your search term. So, unless you know who wrote on the subject that you are researching, there is a huge amount of information that you will be unable to find. Why? I cannot be completely certain of why this is. Google used to let you dig as deep as you wanted in their search results. Now they don't. But notice what happens when you use DuckDuckGo or Bing or Yahoo. My article appears on the first page of their search results, or the second. Even Yandex, the Russian search engine, finds my article, but not Google. I even did a Google search for the video that I did last year on the 2018 edition of The Truth About Israel. Did I find it? No. But I did find some guy named Aaron Goldberg who has 379 subscribers. I found his video and it had all of, wait for it, 515 views. Then I went to YouTube and searched for it via YouTube search. I found it. It's this one. No, I won't give you the link. You can look for it yourself. Will you find it? I don't know. YouTube might even be letting me find the video just to keep me from going berserk. But there's a serious problem when you cannot find something because Google refuses to give it to you. And yes, this really is a problem. After all, you can find my articles on Yahoo, Bing, and DuckDuckGo, but not Google. That's why there is this discussion of why Google must be broken up. They have too much power over what you know. They have the power to suppress vital information so that you cannot see reality. They want to manage your window into reality so that you don't think thoughts that they don't want you to think. Now, not all of my articles are suppressed. The one on the Dunning-Kruger effect has not been suppressed yet. And you can find my article titled The Cemetery. But do I need to go through all of my articles to find out which ones that they are suppressing? And in case you are wondering if my article about Israel got too stale for Google, I did a search for the article that I did before that one. It's Jacob's Trouble Approaches. I found that article just fine. So why is Google suppressing my article? Does it ruin too many closely held beliefs? Is it too Christian? What is the reason for them suppressing that article? The first version of that article was written in 2017, and I only did a second version of it because that first one was suppressed so thoroughly and suddenly. In fact, I wrote the first version as a way to push back against the anti-Semites and to neutralize the lies that were being passed around. And whenever I saw anti-Semites lying about Israel, I would search on Google for my article and paste a link to it in the comment sections because Google was just so convenient. If I saw anti-Semites trashing Israel, I'd do a quick Google search, copy, paste, done. It was so easy to do until they stopped allowing my article on their search engine. It's not like I was doing a lot of this. I actually don't have all that much time to hunt down anti-Semites. Could it be that the article was just too effective? Did the anti-Semites get too hot and bothered by it and run screaming to Google to have it censored? I don't know. But I do know one thing. Google is deliberately censoring its search results. Other search engines aren't. And as I branch out into other social media platforms, I'm wondering if the censorship against Omega Shock will increase. The internet was meant to be a way for people to obtain facts and truth. It was supposed to facilitate the free flow of ideas and information. When she began, Google helped us do that, but not now. Now you get propaganda, and as with any good propaganda, you do get some truth, but it's truth that has been massaged and distorted. Welcome to the last days. And then I saw an article on Consortium News. Twitter restricts account of Julian Assange's mother. This is sickening. The mother of Julian Assange has been trying to push back against the lies being told about her son, and she is working hard to get him released from his virtual house arrest in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. All that she is doing is advocating for her son, and the dirtbags at Twitter are restricting her account. This is a dark and cruel world that we live in, and the dirtbags are running it. And then I was amused to see the claim on Yahoo News that social media giants duck for cover as Washington grows fed up. Washington is fed up? Really? But are we going to actually see them do anything? Of course not. Google and Facebook pay them too much bribe money, so they'll just talk and do nothing. I'm sorry, but you and I know what a disgusting world that we live in. Then we saw the war against us heat up with this Zero Hedge article. After blocking Zero Hedge and others, New Zealand telcos demand big tech, I'm being attacked by a mosquito, censorship surge to protect consumers. So now they are protecting consumers from information by banning website addresses? How does this protect consumers while at the same time they allow the most horrible pornography in the world to pass through? What is it that they are protecting their consumers from? What insanity is this? Have they lost their minds? Then we are back to Breitbart with an article titled, "Journalist Accuses Twitter of Testing More Extreme Shadow Ban Technique on His Account." If you've been around long enough on Omega Shock or the ShockCast, you've seen proof that Twitter shadow bans people. And I've shown you the proof that they are lying about it. Now they're upping their game. Here's a quote from the Breitbart article. Quote, "Twitter confirmed to me today via email that it did shadow ban one of my tweets about Lisa Page's congressional testimony in order to keep people safe. Twitter deliberately deleted the tweet/URL, yet kept it visible for me when I was logged in, so I'd think it was still up," Davis explained. Twitter claimed in its email to me that it mistakenly removed a completely anodyne tweet about public congressional testimony, but didn't explain why it left the tweet and metrics showing no engagement visible to me when I was logged in. Is conning users a bug or a feature? Twitter gave me no notice or explanation when it shadow banned one of my tweets about Russian interference in our elections, he continued. But what's worse is how Twitter apparently gives its users the fraudulent impression that their tweets, which Twitter secretly bans, are still public. Twitter has previously denied shadow banning users, including Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, Republican of Florida. And last year, the big tech company declared, "We do not shadow ban. You are always able to see the tweets from accounts you follow, although you may have to do more work to find them, like go directly to their profile. And we certainly don't shadow ban based on political viewpoints or ideology." Close quote. And remember that Project Veritas showed us that Twitter engineers shadow ban anyone that talks about guns, God, or America, or has an American flag and a cross. If you need more on that, just go to projectveritas.com, where you will see their dishonest and dirty tactics. Notice how this adds an interesting dimension to the vaccine debate. Since social media and news organizations have been caught lying to us, we just cannot trust them to tell us the truth. Even if they are telling us the truth, we cannot trust them because they've been lying to us so much. Do you see how this works? The bottom line is that Twitter has been caught lying to us, and they are still lying to us, and it will take a very, very, very long time before Twitter can recover its reputation, assuming that they start being honest now and will forever stay honest. Right. None of you believe that Twitter will ever be honest or stay honest. You and I aren't stupid. Then Zero Hedge added their own sense of shock at what Twitter was doing on this issue with an article titled, "Twitter Admits Shadow Banning Lisa Page Tweet by Federalist Co-Founder to Keep People Safe." So, they said that they did this for our own good, to protect us. Really? There are facts that are just too true, too damaging, and we must be protected from them. Seriously? Well, let me quote Zero Hedge in their awe at this utter insanity. Here's the last bit of what they said. Quote, "In short, Twitter did not want the public to consider the irony of Hillary Clinton's campaign paying for a foreign national to collude with Russians against Donald Trump, while the FBI scrambled to prove the Trump campaign did. Unreal." In other censorship news, Zero Hedge is now banned in New Zealand and much of Australia following our reporting on the Christchurch terror attacks. Sorry, citizen, some facts are just too dangerous for your own good. Close quote. Yes, dangerous facts should not be allowed. Here, look at some pictures of kittens. Aren't they just adorable? Just like Twitter. Kids, it's time to talk recession. We've been talking about the economy and financial system being vulnerable to a collapse for a very long time, and it really has been close, coming. Unfortunately, every day that the collapse is delayed, well, the eventual collapse will just be worse and worse. Eventually, there will be an explosion that will devastate the world and lead to chaos, confusion, death, destruction, and war. Lots and lots of war. In fact, it has begun already. By the time that you see it, it will be too late to do anything about it. So let's hit some of the recession headlines that we saw over the past week. China Premier vows no massive stimulus as Beijing launches massive stimulus from Zero Hedge. Wait, China says one thing and actually does the opposite? Where have we heard this kind of thing before? Housing slump, foreclosure activity jumps in Austin, Miami, San Diego, and Seattle. Again, Zero Hedge. This is a very bad headline for those of you hoping for a bright economy for 2019. I believe that the recession has already started. Then Mark Faber appears on Greg Hunter's USA Watchdog YouTube channel in a video titled, "Mark Faber, Huge Asset Bubble Will Be Deflated." The one big point that you need to take away from this conversation is that money printing will lift markets. How long is hard to say, but a recession won't necessarily cause a stock market crash, so be careful about shorting markets that are being given artificial support. Then there's this one from Zero Hedge. Core U.S. factory orders tumble for a third straight month. 3 straight months of declines in core factory orders. I call that an ouch. Then Chris Chappell, my favorite commenter on all things Chinese, came out with this YouTube video on the China Uncensored channel about zombie companies. which is a real thing that we finance people talk about, and the video is titled Zombie Company Apocalypse Looms in China. By the way, if you want to know what I would love to turn the ShockCast into, this kind of video is it, the one that I'm talking about. But no, I'm not going there, at least not yet. However, this video is valuable since it talks about the zombie companies. This is the big problem for any economy, which is why we need recessions or even depressions. They wipe out the zombies and allow better companies to take their place. Zombie companies eat up the resources that bright-eyed and bushy-tailed young companies could use and use more efficiently. But since the zombies are protected, the bright young companies get squashed by the zombies and have their brains eaten. And I'm afraid that China has a lot of zombies. America does too, but not as many as China does. So don't let the zombies eat your brains. Then we have FedEx is talking as if a global recession has already begun, and the numbers back that up. I seem to be quoting Michael Snyder a lot this week, but he has had a lot to say that is important for you to read. And FedEx is pointing to economic numbers that indicate that the global part of the recession is already here. But is this recession in America yet? I think so. But how about you? Let me know in the comments section below. Then there is this piece from the much more optimistic website Northman Trader. It's titled, Recession is Coming. I've already quoted the author of this piece, Sven Henrich, I think it's Sven Henrich. But I don't need to do more than point you to the title. If you need details, go ahead and read this article. But brace yourself for some trouble. Sven says that it's coming. I say that it's here. I hope that Sven is right. Then we see the brick wall that we just hit in an article from the website mhansen.com. The article is titled 321 Hansen, Massive House Price Growth Deceleration, a Brick Wall. There are two things that you need to know or to think about from this article. Number one, there's a big sign that the recession is already here. Number two, housing prices in the U.S. are insane. The proof for number one is in this quote from the article. Quote, the only thing that even comes close to this sharp of deceleration was circa 2007, close quote. Whoa. You do not want to hear that. I mean, you remember the Great Recession that happened in 2007, right? Right? And then there's proof for number two about the insanity over housing prices. It's in the psychology that wants housing prices to keep accelerating. You can look at these prices all day long and not really understand what you are seeing. The scary thought is that there are so many people who want to see housing prices continue to accelerate as if this is a good thing. It is not a good thing. Do these people stop and think about what continuously accelerating housing prices mean for new families and those struggling to put enough food on the table for their kids? Continuously accelerating housing prices spells death for American families, period. Then we have one more bit of global recession proof from Zero Hedge in an article titled German Manufacturing Craters Sending Bond Yields Negative. Germany has an obsessively export-driven economy. So when you see German manufacturing decline like this, you know that the world economy is in bad shape. Now, we get to talk insanity. And there is something about evil that turns people into something awful and insane. And that is what this category is all about. And to tell you the truth, I can hardly believe what I'm seeing. But let's start off by talking about a country that has avoided the worst bits of complete insanity. Japan. And we saw this in an article on Zero Hedge titled, Japan says transgender people must be sterilized for official recognition. Whoa, sounds harsh, but think this through. Japan shows us how not to be insane by demanding that people wishing to be identified by another gender, a gender that is different than the one that they were born with, if they wish to be identified as this other gender, they must actually go through with a complete surgery that removes the one gender and replaces it with the other. If you have a uterus and ovaries, they must be removed and replaced by a penis and testicles, and vice versa. That is remarkably sane. And their explanation is also, quote, in its ruling, the court said that the law was intended to avoid confusion and abrupt change to society. Yukari Ishii, a researcher at Toyo University in Tokyo, says that whereas in America and Europe, long campaigns for gay rights paved the way for transgender people to call for more equitable treatment, Japan is further behind. Japanese society is patriarchal and retains strong gender stereotypes, she says, close quote. Here, let me clue you in on something. The reason why every healthy society has these strong gender stereotypes is because of something called, wait for it, reality. Then some insanity popped up in the UK and it got mocked. This is also from Zero Hedge. British MP mocked over GPS tracking national database of knife buyers plan. There must be something in the water or the air that is causing British politicians to turn into morons. Is it the drugs or the cafeteria at lunchtime? Then we saw student insanity on France24.com titled, Students Around the World Skip Class to Demand Action on Climate. A whole generation of students has been brainwashed on the belief that the world is warming when the exact opposite is happening. Mush for brains. A very sad thing. Then the AP reports students globally protest warming, pleading for their future. Pleading for their future? Get a really warm coat and buy a cave. That is where your future lies. These poor mush-brained idiots, and they were taught to be mush-brained idiots, so they can't help themselves. I don't blame the students. I blame the teachers and the mush-for-brains parents. Then we went completely horrifying from the Telegraph. Devout Catholic who used wrong pronoun to describe transgender girl, meaning a guy that thinks he's a girl, to be interviewed by police. And by the way, I interjected who thinks he's a girl in that title. Oh, hey, if you use the biologically correct pronoun when speaking to someone or writing to someone, you could go to jail in Britain. And yes, jail. This isn't just some friendly chat over tea and crumpets. Yay, British society is so free. Isn't democracy wonderful? Especially the British kind. Then on the College Fix, we have making jokes at Portland State gets you reported to its bias response team. Hey, tell the wrong joke and you could get fired. And it wasn't even a bad joke. Isn't America great? It's all crazy, guys. Then get ready to tear your hair out with The Guardian. U.S. judge halts hundreds of drilling projects in groundbreaking climate change ruling. For crying out loud. Climate change. As a reason to stop drilling? I mean, we have 30 years of proof that climate change is a complete fiction. And now we have a moronic ruling by a moron judge to halt drilling for oil. For 30 years, they've been saying we have only 12 years left before we all die. And they have to keep moving the goalposts further out every year. But it's always in 12 years we're all going to die. And now that our climate is getting colder from the grand solar minimum, this is so far past insane that I can't stand it. And then I felt the need to find out if the OK, meaning sign, really was about white power. And I turned to Emojipedia to see their post. No, the OK hand emoji is not a symbol for white power. Morons continue to go ballistic over supposed white power hand signs. Fortunately, there are so few real white power nationalists that it's actually hard to find someone actually coming up with some kind of hand sign that signifies that they are a complete moron. And yes, nothing says stupid like white power, or black power, or any other color power. But since humanity is an almost eternal spring of moronism, we'll always get morons who think that this or that skin color should dominate the world. Okay, the irony is that the OK hand sign is also synonymous with the 666 hand sign. And I'm not sure which side I should be doing it, but notice how it looks like it could be like 3 6s. It's used by Satanists. Now that is something that we've seen before. Satanists are a different kind of moron, and I want those people, those morons, behind bars. In fact, basically we should just throw them all behind bars. Then we dug deeper into the insane when the College Fix gave us this post. Scholar makes moral case for letting people decide their own age. You know, I've decided that I'm 29. Forever. I'm wondering, is this kind of insanity contagious? It seems to be going around a lot. Then New Jersey showed us how insane they are, and I saw it on shtfplan.com, titled, New Jersey Governor Signs Rain Tax Bill. Residents can now be taxed when it rains on their property. To my fellow Americans in New Jersey, that will now have to pay a tax based on how much it rains. You have my sympathy over how insane your government is. When I first realized that Russia was backing Khalifa Haftar in eastern Libya, I realized that this helped me see a big piece that I was missing in the Gog and Magog puzzle. All the other members of the Gog and Magog alliance had identified themselves and were moving into place, well, except for Cush. Cush is a part of the Gog and Magog alliance, and I'm not sure whether that is Ethiopia, Sudan, Somalia, or another country in sub-Saharan Africa. All three of those countries that I mentioned do speak a Cushite language. We'll see how Cush falls into place, but for now we look at Libya. And that means looking at the fortunes of a man named Khalifa Haftar. And he has almost taken over Libya. And he's really good friends with Vlad the Bad Putin. We start off looking at a website titled or called lobelog.com, Lobelog.com. And their post is titled Resolving Libya's Civil War. This is a good overview of what has been going on in Libya for the last few months. The writer of this piece talks about Khalifa Haftar taking over Fezzan, or F-E-Z-Z-A-N, Fezzan. Libya is divided into 3 main provinces, and initially I made a big typo in my Friday article. Anyway, here are the 3 provinces of Libya. Cyrenaica, C-Y-R-E-N-A-I-C-A, it's East Libya. Fezzan is southwest Libya, and Tripolitania is northwest Libya, like Tripolitania. Haftar now controls everything except Tripolitania, the smallest of the 3 provinces, and he has been taking control of parts of Tripolitania slowly. He already has probably maybe, I don't know, half of that. I find it interesting that Turkey has been supporting Islamist gangs in Tripoli, while Russia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE have been supporting anti-Islamist Haftar. For all his faults, Haftar seems to be the only one actually putting Libya back together. The corrupt morons ruling Tripoli and little else cannot seem to agree on anything and appear to be powerless to stop Haftar from taking over. From my point of view, which is an arguably sketchy one, Haftar is playing a very, very smart game of carrot and stick. He's also doing his best to limit the damage to the areas that he conquers and consolidating those areas before moving on to conquer the rest of Libya. Then Bloomberg asks an important question in an article titled, Is Tripoli Next? A Warlord's Victories Risk Libya Conflagration. Let me quote a part of this article. Quote, already in control of Libya's main oil exporting terminals, the LNA, the Libyan National Army, under Haftar, has secured its biggest oil field since beginning its southern campaign in January. That puts Haftar in control of more than 1 million barrels of oil production a day, giving him crucial leverage over the OPEC members' key source of income, as well as command of its most powerful fighting force. Close quote. That means that Tripoli only controls 300,000 barrels of oil a day in production. Libya only exports 1.3 million barrels of oil. So Haftar could turn pretty much, well, he could turn pretty much everything off if he wanted to. And he knows it, but so far he hasn't. Oh, and one of the reasons why he hasn't attacked Tripoli is that the U.S. said that he had better not attack Tripoli. So Haftar might be biding his time, waiting for the foreign powers to throw up their hands in disgust at the morons in Tripoli, which France has already done so. Or Haftar is waiting for the U.S. to get embroiled in something else, leaving him free to advance on Tripoli. We'll see. Just remember that Russia will be the one to gain the most out of all of this. And to give us more evidence of how well Haftar is doing, the North Africa Post gave us this article. Libya, GNA declares state of emergency as Haftar forces move near. Remember what I said about Tripolitania? That region Haftar is moving into? Well, it seems that he controls a lot of Tripolitania if Sirte, one of the cities in Tripolitania, has started to squawk about Haftar getting too close to them. And this next one from Reuters gives us a little more insight into who Haftar owes allegiance to. The article is titled, "Debts Pile Up as rival Libyan Governments Struggle for Power." Notice who is printing Khalifa Haftar's money. That's right, Russia. Right, Vlad the Bad Putin, Russia. And then from a website called thenewsrep.com, we see even more Russia in this article titled "The Art of Plausible Deniability. Russian Mercenaries Supporting Libyan National Army." Oh, and Khalifa Haftar calls his army the Libyan National Army. I did mention it before. Notice also that Russia has boots on the ground in Libya supporting General Haftar's forces. What they are doing there is hard to say, but you can bet that it's primarily training Haftar's forces and providing security for oil terminals and oil fields. After all, that's where Russia is going to get its money back. They're claiming that the Russian presence is at the level of a battalion of troops, and those troops are being supplied via the Wagner Group, a mercenary organization that Russia uses to provide plausible deniability in terms of their involvement with Haftar and other conflicts in the world. When will Russia involvement add a second battalion and then reach brigade strength one day? Russia is heavily involved in Libya and sees Libya as an opportunity to gain a strong base of operations for their activities in Africa and the Mediterranean Sea. And for really only a little amount of money, Russia gains a lot, just like with Syria. Russia reaped big rewards in Syria, and they look to do the same in Libya. Then, we hear more about this Wagner Group in a Breitbart article titled, "Russian Military-Linked Group Helps Strongman General Advance in Libya." I'm sorry, I should have said, "Russian Military-Linked Group Helps Strongman General Advance in Libya." Sorry. Take a moment to consider that these troops will be the best that Russia can offer. These will be a very high class of soldier operating in Libya. And then we take a closer look at Khalifa Haftar's final target in a piece from AfricaNews.com. Libyans fear showdown as Khalifa Haftar eyes capital. The thing is, Haftar now has a stranglehold on northeastern Libya. Tripoli on the Mediterranean coast near Tunisia will eventually fall to Haftar, one way or another. Tripoli has no other means of income without the oil coming from the oil fields that Haftar controls, and Haftar is waiting for Tripoli to fall into his hands like an overripe plum. The problem is that Tripoli is ruled by a ragtag coalition of armed gangs that call themselves militias, and a lot of these militias are Islamists, and they are justifiably afraid of what Haftar will do to them when he takes power. So they might find themselves fighting to the death. It's hard to say. So while we aren't far from the end of this civil war in Libya, there is one final hurdle to overcome, and it's a doozy. I've been writing about the coming of Gog and Magog for years, and you can find a condensed version of all of what I've written and found on EzekielsFire.com. And the articles, I have 2 articles, and they point to the inevitability of Gog and Magog. I really, really, really hope that you'll be ready for this. Please read Ezekiel's Fire to make sure that you are. And yes, it's free for now. Now, when I was studying geopolitics in college, everyone and his grandmother in geopolitics knew about something called the Shiite Crescent, or the Shiite Arc, or the Shiite whatever. It's an arc of Shia Islam that dominates Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. That arc has always been a threat to the Sunni version of Islam, and they are sworn enemies of each other. And when I saw this article from Zero Hedge, I got more than just a little mad. It's titled, "Kept Secret for 17 Years, Intel Memo Warned Bush's Iraq Invasion to Create Perfect Storm." So the morons in the George Bush Jr. administration knew that they probably would be handing Iraq over to Iran as a result of their invasion in 2003. But they still felt like they could take over Iraq without that happening. Those utter morons. Those drooling idiots. I'm amazed at how stupid these people were and still are. Still are. Some might think that they desired this result, where Iran takes over Iraq and has a free route through Syria and Lebanon. But I can find no rational reason, even diabolical rational reason, for why they would desire this. There is literally nothing that anyone can see, that anyone can benefit from, for having Iran have access to the Mediterranean and Lebanon and Syria. Yet they knew that the Shiites of Iraq outnumbered the Sunnis 2-1. 2/3 of Iraq are Shiite. They knew this. Yet they went ahead with their utterly stupid and moronic plan anyway. It's as if they were flipping through the Bible and saw the prophecy of the coming of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38 and 39 and then said to themselves, "Hey, that looks like fun. Let's make sure that happens." And yeah, it's really that stupid. Again, I literally cannot think of any rational reason for why this happened and why they did it in the way that they did it. They literally destroyed the Sunni leadership of Iraq, a leadership that was blocking Iran's takeover of the Middle East and handed Iraq to Iran on a silver platter. What utter imbeciles. What complete morons. And these stupid idiots are still running America, or claiming to. But I can tell you this, without that bit of insanity, you wouldn't be able to have the Gog and Magog that we're going to have. So, think about that. Then there's one more little bit about the coming of Gog and Magog, and it's all about one of my least favorite countries in the world, Turkey. Did you know that it's a member of NATO? Well, not for long. Here's a GatestonInstitute.org article titled Turkey, Putin's ally in NATO? Think of this article as helping to map Turkey's dance into the arms of Gog and Magog. Turkey could have purchased a NATO anti-aircraft system, but there's a problem with such systems. They are designed to be unable to shoot down NATO aircraft, and apparently Turkey doesn't like that flaw. So Turkey is buying the Russian S-400 anti-aircraft system that can shoot down NATO aircraft. So is Turkey planning on targeting some NATO aircraft? Or is this missile system pointed at Israel? I'm thinking that it's pointed at Israel. The S-400 might even be able to detect and shoot down the F-35. If so, this system will destroy the Israeli Air Force and leave Israel virtually defenseless. And that would explain why Gog and Magog is so initially successful in their invasion of Israel. That's it for this week's ShockCast. I really hope that you'll be ready for what is coming. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Proverbs 22:3. Again, make sure that you are subscribed to the Shock Letter at theshockletter.com. For those of you on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and click the bell to get notifications. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. All of that helps you and me get the message out. And check out the boxes at the end of this video. Those links will take you to other ShockCasts, a link to subscribe to the ShockCast, as well as a link to the playlist of the important videos of this past week. And don't forget my book, Ezekiel's Fire, at ezekielsfire.com. You need to read that book, and it's free for now. And so allow me to close with this blessing from Numbers 6:24-26. Yevarechecha Yehovah veshmirecha. Ya'er Yehovah panav alecha vichuneka. Yisa Yehovah panav alecha v'yasem lecha shalom. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. Numbers 6:24-26. I pray that your pastor will give you the words that you need to hear to help you walk the path that God has called for you to follow. And Lord willing, we will see each other next week.